Hello everyone. So as you can see on the slide, this is a session that actually gives you answers for many of the queries that you have raised. So it has taken me some time to respond with my answers for those questions, but many of the questions very pertinent for the upcoming prelims. So I thought I shouldn't delay it any longer, and we have a list of 5 questions chosen, and the number of questions have also increased. Last time I had a total pool of 25 questions, and now it has become 42 questions, right? And I'll also attach the link of the Google form in the same video in the description box below. So any more questions that you have, please do pull in. So the more the questions I have, the more I can think about relevant answers, and the better pool of questions actually are turning up in the recent days. So let's get into the discussion. So we have 5 questions here, and out of the 5, these 3 questions are interrelated, and these 3 are actually asked by the same aspirant. Right, I don't know whether it's a he or she, but it seems to be a first attempter, and all 3 questions are very relevant. Right, just from the nature of questions that were asked, I can actually understand that the aspirant's preparation is actually going in the very correct direction. So 3 questions asked by the same aspirant, and then we have 2 other questions which are commonly asked by multiple aspirants. So I believe if I can give answers to these 5 questions, and if I can start making you think on the correctness of my answers for these 5 questions, I think the session will be a success. Right? The purpose of the session is not to give you an absolute, a singular answer saying that this is the only strategy to follow. The intent and the success of the session lies in whether the session can trigger a lot of thoughts, which can actually help you reflect upon what you have been doing till now and what you can possibly do in the upcoming days. Right, because you see, all toppers, they create their own strategies. Though there are some general patterns, though there are some general instructions which are common across all toppers who crack this exam, every topper crafts, they create their own pathways to success, and so will you as well. You can listen to what I say, you can have reassurance that you are on the right track if it aligns with what I have to say, but if it contradicts with what I have to say, maybe that can become a future success formula which one day I'll start advising to the future generation of aspirants as well. Alright, so these are the questions that you see on the slide, which I'll be handling them. The first 3 questions are actually interrelated. The answers are also very related to each other. Right, so I cannot discuss an answer for the first question without addressing the third question, nor can I discuss the second question without addressing the first question. So the first 3 answers for the first 3 questions are actually intertwined. They are very related to each other. Alright, 4th and 5th are 2 other standalone questions. Right, so getting to the first question, what are the subjects and areas one must get correct for sure 100% to be in the race for a first attempter? This is also similar to another question asked by another aspirant, a very similar question. I am aiming for forest service after attending 50 to 60 questions, also counting questions that I am partially aware of. Alright, it feels like moving towards the end of the cliff. My mind is not allowing me to attempt any further questions. The fear of negative marks paralyzes me. Right, both the questions have similar answers, so let me discuss with you. First of all, try to understand the range of cutoff of general category. Right, because the difference between general and OBC is actually not much, just half mark difference on almost all years. Right, so for general, the most difficult year was 2023. As you can see, the cutoff just radically falls down. All other years it hovers between 80s, it hovers between 90s. Right, slightly lesser, slightly higher. But in 2023 alone, you find the cutoff of general is just 75 marks. So this is the most difficult year when it comes to prelims. Alright, 75 marks and you are good to go. But let me tell you, so as to answer this question, it's very easy to get 70 marks, and it is these 70 marks which you should actually be aspiring to get. Right, so the other question where an aspirant has mentioned that they are not able to go beyond 50 to 60 questions, it means that this is even higher than the expected range that I would want you to attempt. I would want you to only be very certain about 35 questions. You say at the max you can go up to 50, 60, which is pretty well. There's nothing wrong in 50 to 60 questions and you're not able to go beyond that, there is nothing wrong about you, right? I can show you so many toppers year after year who just with 60 to 65 attempts will be able to even cross forest cutoff as well. All right. So our goal is simply to make sure there are 35 perfectly correct answers, and let me prove it to you that getting 35 perfectly right answers is even possible in the most difficult year 2023 as well, which means that getting even more correct answers is possible in other years, right? Once you get this confidence, you will be actually able to understand that it's actually not possible to get all 100% questions from any subjects right, correct? But then there are areas in subjects where you should get almost all the questions right. You cannot get all questions from environment right, but there are certain areas in environment where you can actually get 90 to 100% questions right, and that is what people who clear prelims will also be doing, right? Whereas when it comes to international relations, there are areas like map related areas, which was the theme of my previous video. So for those who have not watched the previous video, just go and watch that. In the beginning of that video, I would have pointed out to you that even in the most difficult year 2023, there were 4 to 5 questions that you could have actually got right from map areas, right? And these are not map of very difficult geographical aspects of Indian geography. Vular Lake, what river passes through that? Kolleru Lake, what river actually feeds into Kolleru Lake? Those could be the difficult aspects of map. But knowing where is Luhansk, where is Donetsk, because Russia-Ukraine conflict is very prominent in news, that's not a difficult thing to do at all, right? It's those map related areas which I assure you every year there will be minimum 5 questions. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you is there are no subjects where you can get almost all questions right, but even in subjects like polity, there are certain areas which you should be getting 100% right, and this session is basically to discuss how you can actually do so. All right, so in my opinion, I would say 35 questions should go right, and I wouldn't be somebody who believes in first iteration, second iteration, and third iteration. No, I have always just done one iteration. Okay, maximum the second may only be for some 5 or 10 more questions. Whatever happens to me during my first attempt, I believe is what is going to fetch me the marks, right? All the second and third, I feel it's meaningless. Okay, so, and moreover, the more and more you keep on thinking on a question, the more and more you keep on revisiting, you start getting more confused about the questions. So I believe in a single shot, when you go through your answer sheet, you should be able to get some 60 to 65 questions attempted, right? If not 60 to 65, at least 55 to 60 questions attempted, out of which 35 to 40 must turn out to be correct, and it is very much possible to do so even in the most difficult year 2023. How? Usually polity there are 15 questions asked, right? But in the year 2023 there was a slight dip in polity questions. I think only 12 questions were asked, but even in the 12 questions it is actually possible to get 10 questions right. Your strategy should be to master Lakshmikant and to master so many other aspects of polity in such a way, which I will be discussing what that is, so as to get assured 10 questions right in polity every year. It can even go up to 15 questions right as well. For example, in 2024, polity questions were a bit easier and more number of questions, around 20 questions were asked from polity. So in such kind of years, you should at least get 14 to 15 questions right, and it's actually doable. It's not difficult, but let's keep a very conservative figure. Okay, 10 questions, you should be getting them right. And when it comes to map related areas from Hindu newspaper, from international relations areas, get 5 questions right. It is actually possible. Watch my previous video to know how it's possible. And in geography, there are multiple different types of questions asked, right? So some of the questions are asked from map areas. I feel it's impossible to get all map questions right, not even all. If I were to attempt here the question paper in 2023 exam, I could not even have got a single question from map right. Okay, but still, then there are another 5 more questions which are simply asked only from ideas of Gochen Leong and physical geography NCERT book, right? 5 questions are of such nature. 4 questions are of such nature. 1 question you simply have to use logic and science. I'll tell you what those questions are. You could have got 5 questions right. And I wouldn't depend upon the current affairs aspects of economy unless the current affairs actually has some logic, some causation, some economic phenomenon which can be utilized to get that question right. Otherwise, I feel current affairs in economics pretty difficult. So my banking on economics is solely based upon the simplest of the questions. 15 questions at least are asked every year. Definitely 5 questions are asked from basic concepts like inflation, GDP calculation, right? So such kind of basic concepts, definitely 5 questions, not more than that. Even if you were to have a look at previous year's performance of yours, you would have definitely scored at least 5 questions from economy, right? Right, and I'm sure all your mistakes would have happened with respect to the current affairs aspects of economy. Okay, so all I do as a part of my preparation is, whenever I attempt a test in economy, when mistakes happen with current affairs, I'm not bothered about it. I'm not troubled about it. But when a mistake happens about a core idea, now I really get upset, because I cannot digest how was my chain of thought incorrect, how was my line of reasoning incorrect. It means there is a conceptual deficiency somewhere, right? Those are the aspects that needs to be addressed. All right. Similarly, science and tech and environment as well, there are at least 10 questions out of 20. See, this is all based on the assumption that you have been reading Hindu newspaper regularly. Without that, this is not possible at all. And if you ask me, sir, I wouldn't read Hindu newspaper, but still I want to get more than 50-60 questions right, no way, right? So reading Hindu newspaper, and I believe you are doing it, from the quality of your questions, I can understand you guys are all serious aspirants. So if you're serious, you know the drill, and it's assumed that you've been reading Hindu newspaper. You have been understanding the significance of reading Hindu newspaper. You have been observing the different science aspects in the last 2-3 years of your preparation. It is with that hope I rely upon 10 questions from science and environment out of 20 to 25 questions asked, at least 10 questions going right. In I think 2 videos before, when I had discussed about the queries that you have asked in the first question and answer session, in that I have pointed out to you how you can actually get some logical science and tech and environment questions right. At least 50% of those questions, you don't even have to have read a single science or environment textbook. You need to simply play around with the question. With common sense, you can actually get some 50% of the 10 questions right. Okay, so what I'm trying to point out to you is, for those who are concerned about how is that some people are able to get so much marks in prelims, they have a 35 question which gives them at least 70 marks solidly coming only from these areas, right? I haven't included a subject itself, history, which has around 15 to 20 questions every year. I'm not even including the subject in this equations here. Okay, because history questions, sometimes, even history questions will reward you if you have spent adequate time going through all the history textbooks. But but history can be tricky if those interconnections, if that sense of chronology is not actually well formed in you, right? If your history knowledge is simply all about memorization of facts, I wouldn't actually say that you can solidly gain 5 out of 15 questions right. No, because history is so vast. Because what you read in NCERTs is only a limited amount of interpretations of historians based on certain set of facts, but then there are so many things which are not there in your NCERTs. There are so many things that are not even there in your standard textbooks that people refer for optionals. That's why, unlike polity, I wouldn't actually say with 100% certainty that each one of you, by reading NCERTs, mastering NCERTs, will definitely get a minimum number of questions right. It all depends upon application. It all depends upon the interconnections across different areas of the chapter that you have developed, right? So I'm leaving out history, because history skill is not something that's uniform across aspirants. So some of you may, even just by mastery of NCERTs, you would be able to manage 30 to 40% questions right. If you're able to manage, that's an added advantage along with the 70 marks. I'm saying, leaving aside history, there are still tremendous scope for getting 70 marks, 35 questions right. Right? So double check yourself, ask yourself this question, whether are you in a position to ensure 10 questions going right in polity every year, and how can that be done in a year like 2023 when only 12 questions were asked, Out of 12, only 7 questions, I think 6 or 7 questions can be directly traced to Lakshmikant. What about the remaining 2 or 3 questions? It's only when you can get the other 2, 3. See, out of 12 questions asked in 2023 prelims, 2 of it you cannot attempt it at all, right? I think one was a question on election weightage of MLAs when it comes to presidential election. It's a pure fact. Okay, though the table is in Lakshmikant, you could not have memorized it. Leave that question aside. Okay, and then there was also another question on 5th schedule area, I think, the role of chief secretary or something. I'm not very sure. So let's, on a conservative figure, let's say 2 questions out of the 12 cannot be attempted at all. That still leaves you with 10 questions. And out of 10, in a difficult year like 2023, I would be happy if you can get 9 questions right. Okay, and to get these 9 questions right, 6 questions could have been got right if you are very, very, very thorough with Lakshmikant. You don't have to go do anything beyond Lakshmikant to have got 6 questions right. But getting the 2 to 3 other questions right will address another question asked by the same aspirant: is main syllabus coverage essential for prelims? Right, now coming to this question, have a look at the question that was actually asked. Right, whether main syllabus coverage is essential for clearing prelims, like getting exposed to IR, governance, security. Well, you have missed out questions, you have missed out subjects like polity, subjects like history, subjects like geography, which are also relevant for mains. You don't have to have prepared the mains relevant aspects of governance, but you should have prepared the mains related aspects of polity so as to have got this 2 or 3 more questions in 2023 prelims correct. Because one was a question on First Amendment Act, right? No prelims preparation would have brought to your attention all the nuances of First Amendment Act. But if you would have prepared case laws, if you would have been careful enough to understand the evolution of different fundamental rights, different conflicts that have gone around fundamental rights, that means case law preparation, right? And how can you do that? You should actually watch my lecture. I think it is a second lecture as a part of this revision series. There's a lecture on polity which actually discusses about all the important constitutional amendments to fundamental rights. Watching that lecture can actually give you an idea about how you can prepare from mains perspectives on fundamental rights. But if you have done that preparation already, you would have known the entire history of First Amendment Act. That's the only way you could have actually got this particular question right. Otherwise, it's impossible to get this question right. So, answering your question, whether main syllabus coverage is essential for clearing prelims, for a difficult year like 2023, covering mains aspect becomes essential to crack prelims. But for a year like 2024, I wouldn't say mains preparation is essential. So, the answer for your question is not a cut and write, a black and white answer. I cannot say yes or no. It depends upon the nature of question paper. Why would you leave loose ends? Right, fill in all the gaps. What if next year the question paper happens to be of the same nature as that of 2023? In that case, the ideas that you built out of the concepts of judicial activism. Similarly, in the same year 2023, another question on what is due process of law. I think 2 options are very close to each other. One was fair application of law, other one was principle of natural justice. It's only somebody who has prepared well on judicial activism, somebody who has prepared well on how judicial activism had expanded the scope of Article 21, only such an aspirant would be very certain about due process of law. Right? So again, here mains preparation would definitely be handy. But to get the questions of polity from 2024 right, what you need is extreme amount of precision about constitutional articles, their ranges. There I would say Lakshmikant would play a bigger role. Right? So answering your question, will main syllabus coverage, is it mandatory, is it going to be essential for clearing prelims? Depends upon the nature of question paper. If the paper gets difficult like 2023, then yes, mains preparation becomes very, very essential. Otherwise, getting this threshold in polity, getting a threshold of 10 questions in polity will become a big question mark. Then you will have to compensate it with better performance across other subjects. Right? What if you are unable to do so? That's why I always believe in at least having 2 subjects as a complete bedrock upon which you can depend. Right? So my 2 subjects were polity and history. History was my optional subject. So a lot of wider reading would have helped me with coping up with a fail-proof strategy when it comes to history. Right? But if history doesn't work for you, right, then go about with some other subject. maybe you could be inclined scientifically towards geography, right? Then master geography at least. But I'm saying, even though without mastering history or geography, still it's possible to get 35 into 2, 70 marks just from these areas. If you are very, very good with Hindu paper, definitely map is going to be a favorable area. If you have been good with Hindu paper, browsing about science, knowing about how this physical world functions, browsing curiously about every gadget that you come across, you know, all that temperament will get you 10 questions right. Alright, no book is needed to get this 10 questions right. Okay, it's just book which is required to get this 10 questions right. In polity, Lakshmikant again and again and again, right? Be very thorough with Lakshmikant. In a year like 2024 question paper where polity questions were actually factual and easy, I would say simply Lakshmikant would have got you 70 to 80% of the total questions right. Okay, 20 questions were asked, 14 to 15 questions easily could have got right if you are perfected with Lakshmikant. Okay, but in a year like 2023, to get this 10 questions right, you need mains preparation as well. And not only that, I'll show you another question of the same year. There was a question asked about match the following areas. Okay, so a couple of parties were given here and a couple of leaders who have started the political parties, it was matched on the other side. Okay, what you can easily find is Rajagopalachari had anti-socialist ideas. He was a capitalist, and it is to defeat the Communist Party, because Communist Party was getting a stronghold in Madras presidency. That's why Rajagopalachari and like-minded rightists, they floated their own party called as a Swatantra Party. So Rajagopalachari was matched with Swatantra, should have been matched with Swatantra Party. And how could you have known this? Simply by preparing post-independence consolidation part from Bipin Chandra, nowhere else. Right? So one question or two questions is asked every year in mains from post-independence consolidation. If the weightage of post-independence consolidation in mains goes down, the weightage of world history would go up. Either of the two subjects would even out each other in mains. Right? So you have to prepare for post-independence consolidation from Bipin Chandra, India after independence. If you would have prepared from that, you would have known about this particular history. Okay, so this is how mains preparation can come handy. If you say that, sir, I always miss my chances of cracking prelims by a very narrow margin, this would be the missing gap in your preparation. This can be the missing gap in your preparation. Alright, so I really cannot have a concrete answer yes and no. If you are too good with environment, if you are too good with science, geography, then maybe the deficiency can be compensated with good performance in environment, science and geography. They are a little bit related to each other. Right? So in that case, even without mains preparation, you can possibly even clear prelims. But what I'm trying to say is, it takes you 4 or 5 days to prepare post-independence consolidation parts of main syllabus. It takes you maybe maximum 10 to 15 days to complete your mains preparation of polity syllabus. But understand the advantage that you get because of what you do. You will get at least another 5 to 10 marks in a difficult year like 2023, right? So if not 5 to 10 marks, at least 3 to 5 marks, and who knows, this 3 to 5 would play the biggest factor in helping you crack prelims, right? And what is that you're going to invest? Maximum 1 month of preparation for all other subjects of all other mains areas included, right? So maybe right now it could be a bit late, but if not for all subjects, leave international relations, leave governance, right? So if you ask me, what about IR, governance, will it also be useful? Yes, it will all be useful. Maybe 1 mark and 1 question right in each of the subjects. But should you definitely do that? Not definitely, because if you have already mastered environment, science and geography, right, in that case I see marginal benefit of what can happen to you in a positive way by going and preparing for the next 15-20 days on mains related areas. But if you say, sir, no matter what I prepare, environment and science always happens to be my weaker areas, and even in geography I don't think I can go beyond 40% of the scores, right, then you are the candidate who should prepare for main syllabus. Make sure no stone is left unturned when it comes to polity. Be very good with Lakshmikant, be very good with ticking all the syllabus points that are given in GS paper 2 syllabus sheet of your mains. Be extremely good with everything about polity. Now this brings us to the second question. What do toppers prepare for prelims? Whether they go with the Lakshmikant, Spectrum, NCRTs again and again. See, the first 3 points, I'm sure it's known to everybody, right? First reading, just a broad overview of the textbook. Immediately after that, you don't have to go and read each and every chapter again one by one. Now take your class tests, because your class tests are designed in such a way that they complete your chapter by chapter coverage, right? So chapter by chapter, take your class tests. Right, now go back to the textbooks. That's the second level of reading. Okay, once you have done everything in this fashion, the next step is you have to go to PYQs. Okay, see, I'm not someone who believes in discussion on PYQs. Why? Because I want the element of surprise of PYQs to always be there whenever you look at PYQs. The minute I teach you PYQs, you are actually losing a great benefit that you can actually get by referring to PYQs after a decent amount of preparation. That's my philosophy towards PYQs. PYQs are not for me to simply go and learn only about PYQs. PYQs are the best way how I can test myself whether I am UPSC worthy or not, right? Because whatever I prepare, the ultimate test is the nature of questions that UPSC asks, correct? So that's why the third level of exposure should be with PYQs. You should not simply directly, if you're so new and fresh to UPSC preparation, on your day one, you should not take PYQs and have a look and try to understand what is the answers for that. That's meaningless. And moreover, the drawback of such an approach is your entire preparation in the upcoming months, upcoming years will always be revolving around PYQs. But the right effective method of very beneficial way of preparing is you prepare randomly from the prescribed textbook, read multiple areas. Now you go to PYQs after taking your class test, after strengthening furthermore, filling in the gaps from your reading. Now you go to PYQs. That's the best way to figure out how are you able to fare against UPSC's questions. No better way to check against than UPSC's own questions, right? So that will be the third way of how you test against PYQs. Right, and full length test series can also expose you to difficult nature of questions. Okay, once this is all done, I believe your Lakshmikant can be perfected that manner, right? So this is my attempt to answer the question whether toppers keep on reading Lakshmikant or do they do something beyond that. They depend upon Lakshmikant, they master Lakshmikant, but once they have done that, now they start doing something else beyond, right? Beyond standard books. That what should you do, let's say with respect to polity, because polity is a subject where I want you to master and become too good with that, right? So what do you do beyond Lakshmikant? Try to go through rules of procedure, not simple plain reading of rules of procedure, but by facing difficult questions, right? So when you face difficult questions, because sometimes a lot of aspirants, they come, they have this grievance that sir, the academy test seems to be of a very difficult standard. I feel, what is there to complain about? When you have difficult questions, it means that there are more areas to learn. Fine, if your actual real examination is easier than this, well and good, right? But difficult questions are the ways how you will be nudged to go beyond your Lakshmikant. So I'm sure you would have faced such kind of questions when you face your test series. Many questions could be asked from very minute areas of rules of procedure of Lok Sabha, right? There could be questions asked about Representation of People's Act, because that's also a part of election. And election in your Lakshmikant is very minimal. It only talks about Article 324 to 329. Whatever Constitution has, it's just explained in simple words. But there is so much to do with elections when it comes to Representation of People's Act, both 1950 and 51. Various provisions of that. All of that could be asked as test questions, right? So going beyond standard textbooks is also a very good way of preparing for polity. Okay, so you can pick up clues as to where to go even by preparing for mains. When you prepare for mains, there is a syllabus in polity regarding mains called as Salient Features of Representation of People's Act. When you start thinking about it, you start about how to prepare, you will come across Election Commission of India's document on electoral reforms, Law Commission's report on electoral reforms, right? I think 255th report. So when you read that, you get a lot of ideas to think about, oh, this can possibly be framed as a prelims question. This particular topic, this particular committee on Dinesh Goswami committee now belongs to electoral reforms domain, So So such kind of ideas will nudge you as to what more areas to focus when it comes to prelims preparation for polity beyond your Lakshmikant. Correct? So that's why in the beginning of the session I said question number 1, 2 and 3 are interrelated to each other. So I have to insist on preparing for mains so as to tell you how that preparation can help you go beyond your standard textbooks in at least subjects like polity. Right? But I wouldn't ask you to go beyond standard textbooks when it comes to history. Right? It's a waste of time, because there are just 40-50 textbooks to which you can actually start getting into if you want more and more information. And taking this loosened textbook on history, trying to remember all the facts is also useless. But when it comes to history, try to form connections and linkages. How? But by getting exposed to different aspects of the same topic. For example, when you read about judicial reforms brought under the Britishers, you will read about the initiatives of Warren Hastings, you will read about the initiatives of Cornwallis, then you read about the initiatives of William Bentinck. So this is one occasion to visit William Bentinck. Now you come across William Bentinck in a different context altogether. And what is that context? That's the context of Anglo-Sikh relationship. So that is another way of how you develop more interconnections between William Bentinck and other aspects of his. Right? You get a sense of chronology now. When you read about the judicial reforms of William Bentinck, you don't really get a sense of chronology. But when you read about the Indus River Water Navigation Treaty signed by the English East India Company and by other Amirs of Sindh, by Punjab, Ranjit Singh, you get a sense of chronology. Oh, it is in 1830s when Ranjit Singh was actually in power. From that, you will be able to develop a sense that probably after that is when the Sikh empire started crumbling down. Right? So, and William Bentinck can once again be revisited when you read about his financial reforms. Right? You will be able to understand some of his initiatives will also play a role in triggering revolt of 1857, and William Bentinck can also be visited again when you read about the Vellore mutiny of 1807. At that time, William Bentinck was the governor of Madras. Right? So visiting the same topic in different occasions helps you develop a web of relationships, a web of interconnections, and that is this web which will help you get history questions, right? Not by linearly memorizing certain set of facts. Alright, so beyond your NCRTs, because NCRTs are written in a linear fashion, right? But apart from NCRTs, just spend some 10 minutes browsing about William Bentinck on Wikipedia. Next time that you read about William Bentinck could be from the answer key of your test coaching academy, where you read something more about William Bentinck. So it's by repeated re-exposures to certain themes in history, you actually master prelims preparation for history. Alright, and this is what toppers do. So answering your question whether toppers read the same book again and again, there are so many people who would only be doing the same things again and again and again without any use. But those many of the toppers might not be going into all these aspects, and they will not be talking about all of this. This also goes as a part of their daily routine. They not only confine themselves to NCRTs, because see, a lot of toppers after cracking this exam, they give this interview saying that I depended on NCRTs very heavily when it comes to NCRTs, when it comes to history. So you should not start assuming that that was the only method of preparation. They wouldn't be mentioning that they have, whenever there was a free time, they were browsing about William Bentinck, about revolt of 1857, about Lord Dalhousie, right? And when maybe they would have even attended a crash course, just some 20-30 days of classes only for certain aspects of prelims aspects of history. Who knows, they could have taken a question bank only for history and they could have solved questions, right? All of that is geared towards one goal, and that goal is developing these connections and linkages simply by re-exposures, not from the same source again and again, but through different channels but on the same idea, same theme, right? So this is also another approach that toppers would do, and this would be a method that they would do also when it comes to geography as well. So they would simply not read about Rana of Kutch when they encounter an NCRT. So sometimes they would also browse what is Rana of Kutch, Wikipedia search. Okay, so this multiple channel preparation is also a part and parcel of every topper's preparation strategy. Alright, so I think I have satisfactorily addressed the first, second and third question. So to summarize this discussion of the first three questions, my approach is, it is very possible to have a foolproof, a fail-safe strategy which ensures you 35 questions going right. and this is my template of what those 35 questions can actually turn out to be. Okay, point number C I have discussed in the previous video. You can watch it to be proved that this can actually work. Point number B, I have a similar question and answer session 3 or 4 videos backwards. Watch that to find out what questions from science and environment cumulatively can go right without even reading any science or environment textbook. You don't even have to know what is the definition of biome, ecosystem, but still you could have got 5 questions from environment right, 5 questions from science and tech right. Okay, assuming you've been reading Hindu newspaper regularly, exposing yourself to different terminologies that come in the newspapers, and some amount of decent healthy browsing as well. Just mere dependence on Lakshmikant, mains related aspects, going beyond standard textbooks, making use of tests to prepare from rules of procedure as well. At least why not spend extraordinary amount of time for this one subject at least? Because most aspirants, there was also another Google form that I had circulated in which I had got your opinions on what subjects you feel as your areas of strength and weakness. Most of the aspirants, they confide on polity, and just to make sure that your belief on your own strength with polity is not misplaced, I would say that it's only when you can get minimum 10 questions or 80 to 90% questions right in polity, at least 80% questions right in polity, only then your belief on your own relative assessment of polity being a strong subject is well placed, right? Otherwise you have to start thinking as to how more to strengthen on polity. It's good that you already believe that polity is your strong area. Strengthen, keep working on it. Nothing should be left untouched, nothing should be left unprepared. No range of articles should go out of your memory, right? Just bank upon this subject to help you clear prelims, and this is the subject that's going to actually help you get extremely good marks in your general studies in your mains, because 50% weightage in GS paper 2 is simply polity, right? So it actually pays you well to also prepare mains aspects of polity at least before your prelims, if not other subjects. Leave history, because I understand history, even to prepare what is there for prelims itself is a big challenge, right? And many of the aspirants who have got this question right after the prelims exam was over, they were also people who have given multiple attempts in prelims, which means they had multiple years of preparation, as a result of which some amount of preparation in post-independence consolidation could have gone in as a part of their preparation. Whereas a first timer may not be able to master post-independence consolidation if you have not even opened the book as of now, because now it's a bit late to go and strengthen post-independence consolidation parts of mains. But this is also a good time to strengthen polity related aspects of mains. Alright. So, and this is the method that you have to actually follow. Right. One round of reading from all the books, any book that you take, just one round of reading, followed by class test, more gap filling, followed by PYQs of UPSC to have this element of surprise, to actually have the first level of reality check against UPSC's nature of questions. Now more gap filling. Right, and with this I think you are pretty decent. Okay, now what you do is, depending upon the subject, the strategies will vary. Okay, so I've seen people during the last 2 months of prelims, what they do is they take this PT 365 document of economy, start reading it. Waste of time, please don't do that. Okay, instead focus on becoming the best in polity, focusing only on the basic concepts of economy, nothing more than that. Even go and have a look at PYQs of 20 years when it comes to economy, right? Keep on checking whether your level of preparedness of basic concepts can get you all the PYQs of the last 20 years of economy alone right. Okay, you don't have to be thoughtful about any of the current affairs, any of the financial instruments that were asked in one particular year, just forget about them. But at least when it comes to PYQs relating to the concepts, basic concepts, are you able to tick them all right? You are well good to go. You don't have to read any book, because reading any other material at this moment is not going to actually help you gain any more marks. It will only add to your anxiety, right? So leave alone that. Okay, become the best in polity. Try to expose yourself in multiple different ways on the same topics of history, right? Multiple different exposures will give you new connections. It will help you form those web proper, right? So this is my answer for the aspirant who have asked me the first 3 set of questions. Alright, now let's move on and address the 4th and the 5th question. Now coming to the 4th question, how to read maps, national parks, especially physical Indian geography. Well, all those who clear prelims will get the map questions right, especially if they are from humanities optional like anthropology or sociology, political science, public administration. Then they would not be exposed to places like history or geography optional aspirant. Okay. Let me tell you, UPSC is such a level playing examination. Even though you could be a history optional aspirant, you would really not be able to get the map questions asked in prelims perfectly right. In one of the year, there was a question where 4 places were given: Chandraketugad, Imamganj, Mangad, and what is the character of those sites. Right? Chandraketugad was given as a site in Orissa, which is actually incorrect. It's a site in Bengal. Right? So getting Chandraketugad is possible for a history optional aspirant. Getting Imamganj may be possible for a history optional aspirant. But getting the third answer right, it's impossible. Even a history optional aspirant would not have heard about that. And let me tell you, even geography optional aspirants could not have got questions like these perfectly right. So first, do not think history or geography aspirants are at an advantage compared to other humanities optional just because they have been reading the subject. No. What we read as a optional syllabus is very different from the nature of questions actually asked. Right? Even though you may know that there is a stupa at Sanchi, you may know the features of stupa to write 2 or 3 points about it, even a history optional aspirant will not actually know what is the river that flows near the Sanchi stupa, what is the valley near Sanchi stupa. But that is the kind of question that was asked in 2023 history. Right? So just because somebody has history or geography as an optional doesn't really mean they have a disproportionate edge in map questions. Right? So come out of that mindset. And let me also tell you, beyond the basic preparation that most aspirants would be indulging in, right? You take a map, you draw all rivers and tributaries, then you mark out all the different national parks. That's a mandatory drill that most aspirants will be doing. I'm sure you will also be doing that, right? But do not be worried, despite all the activities that you have done, that turns out to be of no use in tackling questions related to map, like the ones that we have before us. All these are 2023 questions from geography. Right? Out of that, I feel these 3 questions are map related, and out of these 3 I cannot get 2 of these questions correct, so I leave them unattempted. The reason for this is, first, I told you Jhelum river passes through Wular lake. We don't actually know, right? Maybe optional students may know about the first statement, but they'll also not know about the third statement. Okay, Krishna river directly feeds Kolleru lake. It's very difficult for a non-geography optional aspirant to actually know it very precisely. What if the Kolleru lake is fed by different other streams? What if the exit alone is taken by Krishna river from Kolleru lake and it goes and drains into Bay of Bengal? Anything can be possible. We only know that Kolleru lake is located in Andhra Pradesh. We don't know to the extent required to get all the 3 statements right. That's what I'm trying to point out. Similarly, when it comes to question number 10 that was asked in 2023 in prelims, I mean not necessarily question number 10, out of this, third statement is something that everybody will know, that Seshachalam, Bhadrachalam, these are on the eastern Ghats, these are on the eastern side, so that is nowhere connected to the western Ghats. You can easily eliminate one statement. And similarly, most aspirants would know what are all the important plateaus in India, as a result of which they would have an idea about Amarkantak plateau, Amarkantak hills. Right? So the first statement is right, third statement is wrong. But this is the first time in my life I was hearing this hill range called as Biligiri Rangan Hills. And when you watch videos on YouTube, they point out that this was asked because there was news that came on one particular day out of Biligiri Rangan Hills. Right? I don't even think UPSC was aware of that news, what happened. But UPSC was aware of different hill ranges, and UPSC's exam setter would have asked such a question. But it's impossible even for a geography optional student to know exactly about Biligiri Rangan hills. Right? That's why the advantage of geography optional is gone here. Whatever advantage a general studies aspirant knows is the same advantage that a geography optional aspirant also has with respect to this question. So that's why these 2 questions are virtually unattemptable. And even this third question, knowing map sites where Mundra is located, where Visakhapatnam port is located, is of no consequence for handling a question like this. Right? For example, have a look at this. When I saw this question, I was able to get these 2 statements right. Mundra port, largest private owned port in India. We have a lot of allegations on Adani's Mundra port, right? Because of a lot of drugs entering through Mundra to India. So that was in news. So that's the way I was able to learn that Mundra is actually a port operated, owned by Adani, right? And Visakhapatnam, I was very clear that we have ports like Bombay, the hub of commerce. So I naturally start thinking, why would Visakhapatnam be the largest container terminal in India, right? So that kind of question will help me eliminate Visakhapatnam here. But when it comes to Kamarajar port, I know Kamarajar is a Tamil name, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister, former Chief Minister, so definitely it should be a port in Tamil Nadu. I was under the impression that it refers to Chennai port, but then after browsing I was able to understand it was not Chennai port, it is actually about Ennore port, right? And this is a statement that I was not sure because of multiple red flags. One is, I don't know whether Kamarajar port is actually a major port or a minor port. Second, this is a fact that is completely new to me. Okay, so I wouldn't take a blind guess here. Some of you could have got this question right by using a blind guesswork, hoping that why you would otherwise UPSC ask. Probably it is correct. It could have worked for you, but I would actually not risk attempting it. My point is, the map advantage that a geography optional aspirant has, I would say the advantage is very minimal. They would probably do it even worse than a general studies aspirant when it comes to handling map sites. Anything is possible. So don't be worried if you are not so great with maps, right? But you should be good with maps regarding foreign countries, because that's news based. But these questions are very minute map based. Many of them may not even be in news, right? So when it comes to India map, it's okay to not know things, but when it comes to international relations and map, you should be knowing perfectly about it. Okay, so all these map sites will go waste. Okay, still okay, you are on the right track. If only you can get another 4 or 5 questions from geography perfectly right. It's because, look at this question, it's from NCERT. Because of heavy rainfall in equatorial regions, this is actually a statement in Gocheng Leong. You have to read the equatorial type of climate chapter from Gocheng Leong and you can actually get the statement right. So the soil in equatorial regions where tropical rainforest exists is very, very poor in nutrients, because all the humus, organic matter, just keeps getting washed away again and again because of downpour, right? So if you can only eliminate the first statement, you get the right answer here. Okay, and with respect to coal based thermal power plants, this is something that you will often come in news. You encounter in news that there are power plants like Tata, Jindal's power plant, Adani power plants, which are private power plants. So it's not that or even if you have prepared for mains, when it comes to a topic in economy, it's called PPP, public private partnerships. When you have prepared for mains, you will come to know that in power production there are multiple phases. One, in electricity sector there are multiple phases. One is production, the other one is distribution, the other one is transmission. Sorry. Production, transmission, and then distribution, right? When it comes to these aspects, it's in production and distribution we have private sector participation. Okay, transmission is very cost intensive. It's only government which has to lay all the cables. Maybe last mile private sector will come in for distributing it to the locality, right? Similarly, when it comes to production, we have a lot of private power plants, coal plants, right? Such kind of ideas can help you eliminate option 3 as incorrect. None of them is privately owned. It's wrong. Okay, this again answers your third question, whether mains preparation is important or not. These are the ways how your mains preparation can come handy. Okay, even otherwise, if you have been reading newspaper, you will definitely encounter new power plants, new power projects being commissioned in districts like Ramanathapuram district of Tamil Nadu. Okay, a very arid district, a very water stressed district. You have power plants being commissioned. Power plants which are operational in Tuticorin power plant, right? You should know that these are all dry areas, dry districts. So if you can apply that logic, you can actually get this statement also wrong. None of them are set up in water stressed districts. Just commonsensical, larger awareness based application of mind to get a geography question right. This is not something that comes out of memorization. Alright, so you don't have to be worried about, sir, should I cover all the important power plants? That's a waste of time. Okay, but because the nature of question asks tests something else beyond simply the location of the power plants. Okay, but location of power plants, again, it's a part of your mains preparation, because in mains, if you prepare for geography aspects, there's a topic given about distribution of resources across India and as well as across the world. So when it comes to that topic, you will eventually end up preparing all these areas. Right, so the economic, that's why I have written here, When it comes to the question whether main syllabus coverage is essential, I have written here in geography, maybe when it comes to economic geography alone, covering economic geography aspects will be helpful even in prelims also. Alright. So this is the way, and another 2 more questions, such easy questions. See, look at this. Temperature contrast between continents and oceans is greater during summer than in winter. Specific heat of water is more than that of land surface. Right? Science. Think scientifically. Take land, take water, put it on a vessel, take sand and water, try heating it, sand will become hot quickly. Why? Because the specific heat capacity of land is lower, with water it's higher. What is the specific heat capacity? It's basically the amount of energy that should be given so as to raise the temperature of a body by 1 degree Celsius. You have to give more heat. So second statement is obviously right. I'm sure many of you would also be knowing it. Look at the first question, nice, very nicely framed, right? So we all know that during winters, the continentality of Russia, right? It's such a big continent. Interiors, it drops to minus 40 degrees Celsius, minus 50 degrees Celsius. But the waters, they are not such lesser than the freezing temperature. Waters would probably be around 0 degrees, right? So once the top layer is frozen, underneath water remains unfrozen, which means that 0 degree would be the temperature around which the oceanic bodies, water bodies are, even in even in the same latitudes, right? Whereas the continentality of the land mass, it makes temperatures drop down to minus 50 degrees. So look at the temperature range. Oceans are at 0 degree, continents are at 50, minus 50. So 50 degrees Celsius temperature range exists, right? Look at same latitude in summer months. In summer months, the interior continents, Russia may be around 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. Right? Water bodies would be around the same temperature, 15 to 20 degrees Celsius. So look at the difference in the temperature range, not much. So the statement is basically the reverse. Temperature contrast between continents and ocean is greater during winter than in summer. Correct? Just by this logic. If you ask me, do I know the reason for that? Is it because of specific heat capacity, or is it because of greater insolation received during summer, winter? I may not be able to know all the factors precisely, but I can just apply my logic and get the statement right. Alright, and 11th question is simply from NCERT, nothing else. That's why I believe getting these 4 or 5 questions right, very possible even in a very difficult year like 2023. It is on this belief I have even mentioned in the very first part of this video discussion that only try to get the Gocheng-Leong and physical geography based questions right every year. And similarly, I have made another video on identifying climatic types, right? So if you watch that video, in the very first 5 or 10 minutes, I would have shown you how many questions are actually asked from this theme from Gocheng-Leong. Minimum 1 question every year. There are even years when even 2 questions are asked. And definitely if 1 question is asked from Gocheng-Leong, 4 or 5 more questions will be asked from other aspects of NCERTs. And that too not all the 4 NCERTs, simply from physical geography based NCERTs. Right? India physical environment, just these 2 NCERTs will give you at least another 3 or 4 more questions from geography, right? And using such scientific thinking, using logical thinking, you can get another 1 or 2 questions, right? That is how I place a very conservative estimate that it is very possible to get 5 questions short right from geography, right? And that does not have to involve extensive map preparation. So that addresses your question number 4. That you don't have to be really good with maps so as to get the geography questions right. See, you have to simply cross the cutoff. It can come through any combination of advantageous subjects, right? So if map is a big problem for you, don't worry about it, leave it aside, but focus on the strong area, strengthen it further. Understanding, despite map not being good, there are still areas in geography which you can actually get correct, right? That would be the smartest thing to do. All right. So if you're troubled that map is not your strong forte, forget about it. It will definitely not become even stronger just by investing more and more time. Do the minimum mandatory required activities. right? Drawing all the map of all the important rivers, major river systems, major tributaries. To that extent, just get an idea. But don't be too obsessed, too worried about every small tributary and all the lakes that are around them. Spending time not going to guarantee you better performance. But developing this logical thinking, developing more and more intensive coverage of the two NCRTs, and having thorough knowledge about Goch and Leong, at least the climatology part, surely it will give you 5 to 6 questions minimum, certainly right. Okay, so that answers your question. Now we'll move on to the last question, which was actually asked, that was regarding the tests. Sir, I have not enrolled for any offline test series. I have planned to write offline only all India mocks of Shankar and Vishen. I have taken up online test of GS and CSAT of next IAS, which is once in a week. Is it okay? Because last year I felt too much pressure due to daily tests. Okay, you have been exposing yourself to too many tests last year, as a result of which you are getting anxious, tired, you couldn't study according to your plan. Sir, I am doing the same thing which I was doing in the beginning, like polity revision, history optional and prelim series. Okay, but everyone around me is studying only prelim stuff. Sometimes I get scared, am I going correct? Okay, if everybody around you is simply studying prelim stuff, you, as I have already discussed in the first part of this video, it depends on them, right? Maybe they don't need the mains aspect, but not being good with mains, they'll anyway fail in mains examination, so forget about that. But if you're not too good with all aspects of prelims, then preparing for mains, as I have already discussed, will get you another 5 to 10 more marks in your prelims performance. So where you are, I'm not able to judge from what you have texted. So you decide whether you want to focus on mains aspects as well or not. But now I have something more to talk about, because I feel this is something that all of you must have in your mind about why do you attempt tests, why do you give tests, why do you take tests in the first place, right? My objective of taking tests is based on certain philosophy, and let me imbibe in you what it is. I don't take daily tests, but I solve daily questions. So it's up to you to face the questions in the form of tests, or face questions in the form of a lot of compilations, Xerox copies of all the question papers of multiple different academies that you get in the market. You can use that. Just use some question banks. Okay, it could be today the way of how you can get exposed to questions are varied, right? You can even have Telegram channels where you have a lot of questions. So there are just so many avenues. My whole point is, do you have a similar philosophy like what I have when it comes to attempting tests, right? Why would I take CSAT tests? Why would I attempt questions in CSAT? It's just to test me against time. When it comes to GS tests, I wouldn't test myself against time, because I know there are only very few questions which I can even attempt on the day of my exam. I don't have to spend time on all the questions. As soon as I see a question, if it's too factual in history, if it's too factual about the saints of Buddhism or Jainism, I would probably leave it unattempted, because I don't know. Right? So, since I have that awareness, my concern with trying CSAT questions, whenever I work out reading comprehension questions, my focus is only on time. Okay, was I able to get the question right within 1 or 2 minutes, or why did it take too much time? Why did I get stuck? Why could I simply not walk away from that question? You know, it is that introspection which goes after I solve a CSAT test. I'm not really concerned about whether I got time and work question right, whether I got clock and angle question right. That is not at all my concern. Whether I was able to manage time well or not, that will be my priority whenever I take, even in my room or at my home, and I work some 10 questions out of CSAT. That will be my only obsession, right? So this is based on the assumption that you can read and comprehend passages well. If that is the case, only focus on time management whenever you try out CSAT questions. Don't be worried that you don't know a particular concept at all. That concept will hardly even be asked in the exam, and even if it is asked, it may not be asked in the manner for you to even recognize that it is this particular concept that has to be employed in your question, in your problem solving. So do not be worried too much about problems that you cannot solve in CSAT. Only be concerned about the problems you actually solved and how long did it take for you to solve those questions, right? That should be your daily routine when it comes to solving CSAT tests. Whereas whenever I take a test with respect to polity or history and geography static areas, just from NCRT based areas, whenever I take a test, it's simply to make sure I know 3 statements about money bills, where money bill can be introduced, whose recommendation does it need, and thirdly, what is the powers of Rajya Sabha when it comes to money bills, right? But do I know all the definitions of money bill under Article 110? It is to develop that precision I'll be focusing on taking tests, right? So whenever it comes, because my goal is to get 10 questions surely right out of polity, and to get those 10 questions surely right, I should actually know anything and everything from Lakshmikant, right? So even the definitions of money bill, I should be knowing it decently. I should be able to recollect and remember it on the day of the examination. To that extent is what I'll be focusing whenever I take a test on polity, right? And when it comes to history and geography as well, from those basic NCRTs, I'll make sure every question that I attempt which is asked from these basic NCRTs should go right. Until it goes right, I'll keep on attempting tests. Okay, so I think this is how you should actually evaluate whether you need tests or not, right? Simply mindlessly taking a full test every day is useless, right? Full tests are more to develop a strategy and to firmly place your belief that a particular strategy works for you, because full test is an overall package. It is in full test where you have to employ what I discussed in the beginning of the session, where you have to check in every full test whether this formula is working well for you or not. Only in full test you can get a sense of this strategy right. But until you take full tests, so strategy is not something that you develop in a microscopic manner. Microscopically you can develop the content, but strategy is very macro, right? So whenever you take daily tests or daily question solving, you focus on these approaches, right? And whenever I take a question, let's say on science or environment, okay, when the questions are too conceptually deep, okay, the questions are too conceptually deep regarding what you find as concepts in Shankar environment book, right? If you're not able to get them right, don't be worried. Okay, don't be worried at all about your poor performance in environment. Okay, your focus should only be to make use of the tests to get more awareness about what's happening in current affairs, because tests are a very good way of exposing you to current affairs, because many of the test questions are set based on many different compilations of various academies, right? The question setter, just to make sure their questions are novel, what they do is they refer a lot of sources, and that's how they finally end up setting a single question. You don't really know how much of efforts and brain power goes into the framing of every single question. So the question setter ensures wide coverage, and that will be useful for you. So whenever you take a test on environment, don't be focused on marks at all. Even if you get 0 marks, it's still fine. But just get to understand there is a new technology called as Wolbachia method which has emerged. That Wolbachia will never be asked in the future years, right? But whoever had faced such questions in their test series were able to get the question in 2023 prelims, right? But when they faced that test, they were not able to get that question right. That's how environment tests have to be prepared, have to be approached. Okay, so don't think polity tests are for you to know things in Lakshmikant. No, you should be already good with whatever is there in Lakshmikant, because this is the time for you to only double check yourself that you're too good with Lakshmikant. But even this is a good time for you when you take tests in environment to get to know new things for the first time in your life, right? So environment tests should not be a concern even if your scores in environment tests are lower. It's an opportunity to know something new. Same is the case with science based, current affairs based tests as well. If a question is based on basic physics and if you're not able to get it right, think why. Why is your application of science incorrect? But if you are unaware of something that's asked in science tests about current affairs, do not be troubled at all. Learn based on that test. All right. And then there are tests which can simply reassure, which I have already told you. That is like randomly taking 2014 UPSC question paper and now trying to solve it. Okay. It could be only a limited area. It can only be polity questions. But after you solve it, and that is why I really insist that you need to have that element of surprise whenever you solve previous year's question of UPSC. If you have already attended one session in your own academy about a PYQ discussion and 10 times you have seen YouTube videos discussing the same, then it makes actually no sense to go to a PYQ and try to solve them. Okay, PYQs can guarantee that element of surprise, and that will be the biggest confidence booster, right? You assume that you are good with polity, but now when you went to PYQ, let's say 2021 polity questions, and now you get 8 out of 12 questions right, nothing boosts your confidence better than this, because you know this is the real exam, right? So this is the objective of why you take PYQ tests. PYQ tests are to reassure yourself, to keep your confidence levels high, but for that you need that element of surprise. But if you have already been very familiar with PYQs, you can skip the fourth aspect. And lastly comes full tests, right? So don't be mindlessly giving full tests daily, every day, assuming that solving 10,000 questions is going to definitely give you success in prelims. I have seen so many aspirants who have taken 5,000, 10,000 questions and still miserably fail in prelims, because all these reasons why they take tests, they don't really have such reasons. For them, everything is about knowing something new. No. Alright, so when you take a fortnightly test, a full test, right, it's just to make sure the strategy, my strategy is to get this 35 questions right, split up, you already know. My reason why I take full test is to ensure every test gives me a minimum 70 marks out of these subjects. Okay, see, I still remember my days when I used to take prelims tests. There were a lot of aspirants who used to score at least 15-20 marks more than me in almost all the tests. Many of them did not even clear prelims. My score was always somewhere in the median. It was never in the top nor in the lower bracket. It was somewhere in the middle, but it was consistently in the middle, and it was consistently based on whatever areas I strongly believed in that rewarded me. And whatever did not reward me, I did not even care about it. I was only strengthening my strategy more and more whenever I attempted full tests, and I don't attempt more full tests, just 4 full tests altogether put together, right? So I would not suggest you to take, see, even by taking more and more full tests, if you feel that your strategy holds good, you are done. Even if you do not even bother to check what is the right answer for a particular question, that's still fine. There's no guarantee the same question is anyway going to even be asked in your exam. Alright, so this is the approach towards tests. Alright, so I hope I have given you satisfactory answers for all your questions, and I'll again share the Google form, because having your questions is also very enjoyable for me, because I start thinking a lot before I can frame answers. That also sheds a lot of clarity. It also helps me double check on my own strategies as well. Alright, so first of all, I thank you for the questions which you have given to me, and also whenever you are in doubt, come up with more questions, more discussions, more clarifications. Alright, so that's the end. Thank you.